And your boy. That's a big one. All these girls I went to school with. After 20 years, they're divorced.
You make fast talking.
Yeah, because we want to save a little time for you. It looks like actually we're first in the battle.
Yeah, I'm the last person on. Well, I'm the Kingston.
Is it ready? I mean, we're starting a little late, and I'm sorry, but we got carried away in the last discussion. My name is Victoria Campbell, and I'm the moderator, but I don't know exactly. These people are way ahead of me, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves as they bring up the case studies for meeting community needs with new government policies and initiatives. I'm really happy to be here, and I run the Community Garden Program in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm on the Food Policy Task Force there, and the Sustainability Green Team. So, I'm hoping y'all are enjoyed your day and are staying for the movie later. We'll get to talk later.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff LeJava. I'm a senior staff attorney at the Land Use Law Center at Pace Law School and also an adjunct law professor there. I teach land use law, sustainable development law survey, and environmental dispute resolution. So I'm fairly intimately involved in a lot of sustainability initiatives, one of which happens to be looking at urban agriculture and how we can work with communities to help them advance their urban agriculture goals. I'm going to give just a very quick background on the center itself and how we became involved in the cities of Kingston and Newburgh, but the substance of the discussion will be presented by Jennifer Schwartz, Berky, and Madeline Fletcher because they're really the experts on the communities in which they live and work. The Land Use Law Center was founded in 1993. It has two primary purposes. One is to advance sustainable development law throughout the country. So we do that as an academic center at Pace Law School. We work with law students to undertake research on kind of the key issues in sustainable development and land use. We work on distressed property remediation or revitalization of distressed communities, urban agriculture, land preservation, large landscape scale land preservation, transfer of development rights, transit-oriented development. If it falls under the rubric of sustainable development, we probably have some hand in doing some type of research and work. And so based on that work, the research of our students, we then write and publish on the topics, and then we present that information to community organizations, to academia, but most importantly, we convey that information to municipal officials, those who are going to be deciding policies and adopting laws that are going to have an impact on how our communities grow and are preserved. We also train municipal officials across the country in advanced land use strategies and collaborative decision making. We've now probably trained close to, across the country, probably 3,500 or 4,000 municipal officials. We've expanded our training program, which started in the Hudson Valley of New York. It's expanded out to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We're involved in Connecticut. It's gone out to Colorado, Utah, and now we're in the process of moving that also to Idaho. So that's just a quick background on the center. We work very closely with both community organizations and municipalities themselves. And our entree into the various projects that we work comes about in one of two ways. First, we're contacted by municipal governments or community organizations because of our knowledge base and our expertise, and also from the networks that we've developed through all the training that we do, to come in and try to address a particular concern or need. And then we also have, where us as center staff, we're a full-time staff of 5, we have certain interests. And based on those interests, we look for potential pilot communities that we can partner with to try to advance key research goals, and then understanding how we can implement strategies to achieve those goals. In the case of City of Kingston and the City of Newburgh, both of these came about more through our involvement with citizen organizations, and then developing relationships, particularly in the case of Newburgh, with city administrative staff. But I'm going to, again, let Jennifer and Madeline speak to the projects. Regardless of how we come into a community, we go through a pretty standardized process, which I'm sure many of you go about when you're engaging the public or working with organizations. We begin with an initial community visit. We identify key stakeholders, and we begin conversations, dialogues with those stakeholders to understand what are the particular needs. So in the case of the City of Kingston, that came about because of my interest in urban agriculture and zoning and land use regulation as a barrier. And I happened to be doing some research and came across the name of a woman by the name of Rebecca Martin, who at the time was the executive director of the Kingston Land Trust, who had established an urban ag committee, and I saw that they were concerned about zoning and comprehensive planning, and so I reached out to Rebecca, and through that then became involved in that project, and we had several initial stakeholder meetings. We identified who in the City of Kingston was already engaged in urban agriculture activities through community gardens, the YMCA Farm Project, those who were interested in creating a food policy council and others, and we started to have that conversation. We then conduct a series of listening sessions to, again, really kind of narrow in on what are the key issues that the community or the municipality wants us to address. The key question there is who else is missing from the conversation, because we need to know who else we need to have at the table, and then we bring them in. And then in consultation with those stakeholders, we determine the key legal needs and opportunities. Again, we are a legal academic center, so we do have that legal perspective. We look for what are the leverage points that we can help advance the particular needs of the community. And then we develop an implementation strategy, including identifying research needs, where we can then engage our students, have them assist us in that work, attend meetings, and the like. And then we begin to execute implementation strategies with the community partners. So this is the way we approach our work in all that we do. Very generalized. There are many sub-steps to all of that, but it's important. So we then, in developing implementation strategies in the City of Kingston, the city needed to legalize urban agricultural activities that were already happening. And for us, the opportunity, or for the city, the opportunity was they were looking to update the city's comprehensive land use plan. So that was kind of the key leverage point to get the Urban Ag Committee and stakeholders involved in the process. In New York State, like many other states, your zoning regulations have to be in accordance with a comprehensive plan. And so in that case, making sure that we got goals, policies, goals, objectives, strategies in the comprehensive plan relating to the promotion and encouragement of urban agriculture was important, so that then the implementation of that comprehensive plan is through changes to zoning regulations, so that we could make sure that the agricultural activities that were already happening would be done legally, so that for someone who had backyard chickens, for example, or a front yard garden, even though their neighbors hadn't complained as of yet, once that was allowed, then that was going to be able to continue. It wasn't going to be stopped because of neighbor complaints. And then in Newburgh, the city itself has a number of distressed properties. Madeline, you can talk the number. And so there was a need for new legal mechanisms to address this circumstance. How in a community that's looking to revitalize do you deal with a significant amount of vacant and dilapidated properties? And there, the center, working with the Center for Community Progress, the city of Newburgh worked to develop land bank legislation that was then passed by the state of New York along with a lot of other organizations, and then worked to get the first municipal community land bank in the city. My relationship with the urban agriculture has been then seeing urban agriculture as a key economic development strategy for the city. So that's my very limited introduction. The real work is being done by Jennifer and Madeline. We're just helping kind of facilitate and serve as the legal support for the great work that they're doing in their communities.
Press this one.
Yep, I did that one right there.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Schwartz Berky, and I'm an urban planner. Sounds like a 12 steps. And actually, it's true. I went from being an urban planner at a very global institution, the World Bank, some of you may have heard of it, to coming to Kingston to settle down and have a family and become what was much less of an academic planner with all these theories and best practices, right down into activism. And in fact, if it were 10 years ago when I arrived there, I would be taking my life in my hands to say whatever I'm going to say to the camera. I know we're being recorded. But I did actually risk my job many times as a county planner in becoming an activist in the community. And I don't know if all planners work in that role, but I was compelled by what was going on in our city. There was a void of leadership. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we have a new mayor, and we had aldermen who had been on the job and sleeping on the job for 10 years. We now have all new aldermen in City Hall. We have a transparency project. We have arts and medicine access. We have programs for free health care. We have people starting community gardens. I don't want to paint a rosy picture entirely, but this is a place where activism has really taken hold, and we've become something of a model city for community engagement. And that's why Jeff found us. So I was engaged by my friends who used to sit around the kitchen table to help them change the zoning right in time for the comprehensive plan to be developed. And we were the ones who brought that to the table. 10 years ago, there was no comprehensive plan for the city since 1961. And we said, we have to change this. This is the 21st century. We have a new city. We have new needs. We have 40% poverty rate in our food access districts. We really need to make a change. So this is just a map. I began doing this work for the community. I knew that I had within only a 6-month window to help them rewrite the zoning so it could get to last night's meeting, actually 2 months ago. But last night they had a meeting they didn't even announce until 72 hours before, which is the rule, so that people could come and be engaged. They're still doing that in City Hall. So people couldn't come and talk to the comprehensive plan about what was wrong with the city and how they could be involved. So there's still something of a problem. But we do have, because of the shrinking economic base all up and down the Hudson, for example, we've lost some of our major industries to globalization. We lost IBM and lost 7,000 jobs in our city. We have 800 vacant properties in a city of only about 3,000 parcels. So about a third of the city is vacant. And so all the blue, if you can see it, is a little different color, represents our vacant land in the city. So even though this is a small 24,000 person historic city on the Hudson River, bucolic, wonderful, it has severe poverty and severe problems, and it has an access to food problem. For example, 1 in 5 children in Kingston goes to bed hungry. If there's a snow day, they don't eat because they closed our most recent food pantry, because of a dispute with the city government. We have served about 1 million people from that food kitchen before it was closed. And 44% of our children are overweight or obese. So we have a pretty serious problem there. And this is what it looks like, the food deserts and the lack of access. If you look at the areas in red, those are the areas in the city that are the most poor. So this is an environmental justice issue. And those are also the areas of the city where, as you can see, there is a lack of access, because if you see those purple circles, that's where you can get an apple or a banana not necessarily walk to a fresh food source. But they charted those because those are the grocery stores. So what happened in 10 years? Because of the lack of property value, the fact that there were houses going for $30,000 within an hour and a half of New York City, lots of people started pouring in from places like Brooklyn, and there is a certain hipster thing happening, but a lot of people said, okay, we love this city, we're not commuting to New York City anymore, we want to be engaged. And we ended up creating every kind of activity you could imagine based on our own abilities. And my work was to work with these people to help them develop festivals, as I said, access to health care, to the arts, gourmet served meals in the food kitchen, children learning how to grow food, democracy training, creating safe routes to school, planting a garden in front of City Hall, doing public art. So it was everything, soup to nuts, recognizing an African American burial ground that had been ignored, forcing reconciliation of the Dutch church to apologize to the slaves who were buried outside the city walls. An amazing transformation took place. And now I've said that enough, but I think the important thing is that what we did was we also brought facts into the situation. We studied all the vacant parcels, all the vacant city parcels, and as a part of the work, which was raised by these activists, no big grants, just a local donor giving a few $1,000s to us to examine all the problems, reread the zoning and rewrite it. We managed within this 6-month period to get this zoning recommendation to City Hall in time to be part of the comprehensive plan. But as a part of that, we also ended up, long before that, we ended up with this movement where people, as I said, coming back to the city from other places without jobs began creating jobs for themselves. So we ended up getting gardens into all the schools. We created 15 shared community agriculture spaces, and we now have 2 urban farms in a small city of 25,000 people. So this is just an example of all these agents of change forming groups, looking for grants, finding ways to use scarce resources to develop the city. So in a sense, it was citizen development, citizen-led development. We also managed to attract the attention of the Department of Environmental Conservation and all sorts of other agencies, and we became one of the first cities in New York State, after New York City, to develop a climate action plan, which included urban farming. We also were the first city on the Hudson River to do a flooding resiliency plan, because we have about 7 miles of waterfront, and it floods. It flooded during Sandy and Irene, so the idea was to develop more resiliency on our waterfront. And finally, our comprehensive plan, something we had to fight very hard for. So as a part of the work that I did, I also, in doing the zoning analysis, we have 2 ambitious phases, one for a few thousand, and the other, hopefully, with the help of granting sources, we can start to think about where job creation comes from. But in the zoning analysis phase of the work, we looked at all of the places where we could potentially integrate urban farming. I'm going quickly because I want to respect the other speakers. We found all the parcels. These are all the parcels that the city owns, and there are over 35 acres just of city-owned land that could be farmed. So the next step, and hopefully the next phase, would be to create a land bank like they have in Newburgh, and you'll hear about that next. But with just 35 acres, we could create over 100 jobs and over 4 million servings annually for our population, which is about 1 serving every other day for every person in the city of Kingston. So very quickly, some of the recommendations that I made for this part was just to increase political commitment, and we have done that, to integrate this work into the comprehensive plan, and we have managed to do that, to get changes to the zoning. And one of the reasons that we decided to wait on chickens was because we knew we would have political opposition, and we decided to take an incremental approach. And then capacity building and community partnerships. We have all these little organizations now, and very few of them have a full-time staffer or even revenue. So the idea was figure out how we can leverage one another and work more closely together. So that's another next big step. And then to coordinate all of that together. Phase 2 focus, a major grant from somebody. That's what we really need to start changing the food production and infrastructure, because we know, as we heard this morning, how many of you were here this morning? We heard from Greg that the biggest portion of economic development really occurs in outside of the wonderful work that's being done by the growers and in the value-added and processing and marketing part of this work. So we're very lucky that we had a major infusion of capital from a member of the Buffett family, and they are starting a farm hub just outside the city of Kingston. It'll take a few years, I think, for them to recognize the role of urban farming, but we're hoping that the farm hub will extend to a food hub in Kingston. And we also have a food processing plant now where the old IBM was. That took all those jobs away, so there's a nice irony there. And we're just hoping that in the next phase we can bring some of the best practices to increase that economic development. So that's my piece, and I know that Madeline has an even more interesting one to talk to you about, so thank you.
Thanks. I've now done this, Jennifer and I have done a couple of these presentations, and it's always difficult to go right after her because, how do I do this? Oh,
Just press
oh,
that
that's
down.
easy. Okay, sorry. So my name is Madeline Fletcher. I'm the executive director of the Newburgh Community Land Bank. Our logo is sort of distorted up in the corner there. I am a lawyer by training. I worked as a land use lawyer in New York City for quite a few years. I also have a degree in urban planning and have done that a little bit as well. And I have been working in the city of Newburgh for about 5 years. I started doing housing work, and then I moved to the land bank about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now. And basically what the land bank does is try to figure out ways to remove barriers to redevelopment in Newburgh. We have a similar vacancy issue to Kingston. We are about 60 miles north of Manhattan, so we're about a half hour or so closer than Kingston. We're on the same side of the Hudson River. Neither of us has good train access to Manhattan, and which is part of the problem. And so if you look at this map, this is a map of the city. It's 4 square miles. Right, we have maybe a mile or two of Hudson River waterfront. We also have one of the largest historic districts in the city of New York. It's really beautiful, spectacular, wonderful architecture. And it's all in pretty serious disrepair. The red cloud on the map is a code violation density map. So basically, the biggest issues that we have in the city coincide very closely with the historic district and with the downtown. So even though all of these parcels are part of the city, really we just have this major, really concentrated distress area. And some of the, in some of the sections here, we have greater than 50% vacancy rates. The people are, more than 50% of all the population live below the poverty line. Most of them are children. We have some very, very serious problems. And part of what the land bank does, so we work right now exclusively in this area. We acquire property that's owned by the city. The city's taken through tax foreclosure. We also are working with banks to try and acquire some foreclosure properties and some things that have been that have had sort of ambiguous title for quite some time. So we're working through all the various title issues and trying to get property under our control so that we can figure out the best way to put them back into active use. So obviously when you have a community with a lot of these physical distress symptoms, you also have nutritional distress. So when I first came to Newburgh and I first started working with housing and these vacant property issues, I also kind of took a look around and said, well, what are these, what are people eating? There's no supermarket, there's no gardens, there's no real apparent access to any kind of healthy food. So we undertook a community food assessment. There's funding available from the USDA to communities in need to kind of take a look at what people are eating, why they're eating it, how much they're paying for it, where they're acquiring it, what the barriers are. So we asked all those questions, and we came up with, a couple of major glaring results. We surveyed a few hundred people in the area, and we looked at soup kitchens and food pantry usage and all of those things. And we figured out that, one, transportation is a problem, which is not shocking news. But we also figured there is food available in the city in certain places, but they're sort of not in the normal course of, where they're not in your typical path. So you have to go seek it out. You have to make the decision that you want to go get that food, and you want to make some good nutritional decisions before you would actually sort of come upon this place. And so there was a lot of information lacking. People didn't know what a healthy diet really consisted of. So really what we figured out is that for a plan, we kind of needed to figure out ways to bring food into the community rather than trying to tackle bad transportation. We needed to figure out how to bring things in and to bring them to where people are actually getting their day-to-day nutritional needs met. So we started trying to figure out, if anyone had even looked at this question, and if anyone had looked at the nutritional question from the point of, local food production. And we found that there were a couple of things. One was that the comprehensive plan, which was updated in 2008, and which almost no one ever refers to, actually set a really aggressive goal to produce food in the city of Newburgh at 10%, which is substantial. And that goal had not really been analyzed at all. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But a lofty goal is a good one, right? You wanna be positive. And it did really set some parameters, sort of looking to encourage community garden, which we thought was good. So at least we had like a starting point. And then, I had just recently taken over at the land bank, and so I thought to myself, I'm here in this sort of policy setting position of this quasi-governmental organization, so why don't we just, make it our policy that, we should also set goals of taking vacant land and setting it aside. Rather than trying to redevelop every square inch of vacant space, we should be incorporating the reuse of vacant land for urban agriculture and community gardening into our plans. We should we should preserve space as we redevelop. So we've done that. This little map, which is not ideal, but so this whole area, this is our sort of initial neighborhood that we're working in, and this entire area is undeveloped, and we've sort of designated that as sort of an area that we won't develop as we acquire it. Oh, laser beam. Okay. Yeah. So thanks. So what I've tried to do here today is kind of break down the process of what we've done over the past few years to try and lay the framework for preserving space and encouraging urban agriculture, connecting that to community nutrition, in sort of steps that I think any community can follow, even communities without funding to do anything. Like really just a well-organized group of volunteers, I think, could undertake most of the things that we've done in Newburgh so far. And again, where, 5 years, 10 years behind Kingston, 5 years. I don't know. It's different. We're apples and oranges. So we're very much at the beginning of our process. So I think it is a good time to kind of reflect on the process, and it's, this sort of malleable thing that we're always adjusting. But the first thing we set out to do was identify our inventory. There wasn't really good data about what land could be even used for vacant, for community gardens. So we set out, most of the vacant land in these neighborhoods was formerly developed, so it's basically rubble piles. So we wanted to figure out exactly what we're dealing with. So we did a windshield survey with a group of AmeriCorps volunteers. We looked at whether lots were sloped or flat or shaded or sunny, or whether there was like sort of a foundation on it or not, or all the different things that might point to like physical conditions suitable for garden use. Then we also, for anything that we thought met some of those requirements or good requirements, we would do soil testing for. So we underwent soil testing, and at the same time we did a community asset mapping project, because we knew that if we were going to try to have community gardens, we also had to have people to run those community gardens. So we mapped like where churches were located, really active churches were located, Boys and Girls Club, the hospital, there's a community college. So we kind of wanted to set up how all those things were related to the vacant land that we thought might be suitable, so that we could try and start making pairs, matching up groups. The second thing we did was to identify major barriers. Our big barriers was that there really is not, the zoning again is from like, the 60s. It doesn't address it at all, the issue of gardening. And so there is not really clear regulation, so we didn't know kind of what would happen if somebody complained or found, there's just total ambiguity. There is specific, provisions preventing chickens and livestock, chickens because of cockfighting issues. So there was a more recent law preventing keeping chickens because of some illicit activities. Composting was sort of questionable, and a lot of our lots had very high lead levels. So we had to plan basically around that. The third thing we did was identify our partners. In addition to doing the asset mapping, where we identified churches and youth groups and all those kinds of things, we also looked at people in groups who had really good knowledge about the actual, gardening process and urban agriculture and those kinds of things. And we came up with a list of anyone, not just in the city, but in the region. We had a number of groups. It's actually, Newburgh is a very urban place in a very rural county. So we're sort of this little tiny, 4 square mile place, and you go 5 minutes away and it's apple orchards and it's organic farms and it's what's called the black dirt region. So there's actually a lot of knowledge about farming. We also have a 36-acre Vauxhall Homestead Park in Newburgh, which is really underutilized. The fourth step was to go out and build support. We sort of started working with local council people and trying to address everyone immediately says, you're going to garden, there's going to be rats. And there's not really rats. There are groundhogs, which are gigantic, but there are not really rats. Which I had never seen before. I'm from Brooklyn. There were no groundhogs there, but there are rats. So we started just working with, local council people, staff people to just try to address the issues that came up. And then we concurrently also, we didn't want to just sort of impose community gardening on the community. We wanted them to sort of come to it. By building interest. So we built one garden at a community center where lots of children come for programming, sports programming and education programs. Their parents come, there's literacy and there's English language programming and all those kinds of things. So we built a garden there. Just to kind of test the waters, we put it out there. We had volunteers manning the beds so that even if people weren't renting them out, they were really producing. We had a cooperative extension there to teach people, anyone who would come by on a Saturday who was interested could kind of learn about what was going on. And that was really successful. In the second year, we actually ended up doubling the size of the garden, and we had everything full. So that was really where it worked out amazingly. And one of the other things that was really great about building the pilot garden was that we got groups interested. So we had people, the beds that initially got rented were like, an adult daycare, group, the Boys and Girls Club. So bringing all sorts of groups together that normally don't interact at all kind of came together to garden. There was a women's shelter, there was a food pantry, it was really, really just this really great sort of cooperation of groups that, they wouldn't pass each other on the street during a regular day. So, and then the last step was sort of to take all these things that we had figured out and worked on and to really make a plan. And one of our big things was to sort of create a center that would sort of act as a coordination point. So if anyone wanted to create a garden in their own community, there was a place to come and ask questions and to reach, contact the right people to sort of get help with those things. And we thought that that was really important. I think that will sort of act as a hub as we go forward for all different types of nutrition education and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that we planned and are working on now is capacity building, so utilizing the Cooperative Extension, Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardener Program to work with community groups who are interested in neighborhoods and making that pairing. We've done that in several cases, which has been pretty successful. Again, talking about working with the land bank so that it becomes part of our policy and activities to designate space for community gardening and urban agriculture. And then, we're now at the point where it's going well. There's plans for more gardens, so we want to make sure that this is becoming, now we're at the point where we're redoing zoning, there's a new land use plan, so we want to make sure that that's also getting sort of worked in so that we can sort of formalize this as something that, Newburgh does and wants to do and is a real asset. And that's it. Thank you very much. I don't know that.
Yes. Hi, Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Funn. I'm the program coordinator for Branch Avenue in Bloom. Branch Avenue in Bloom is a program of the Maryland Small Business Development Center. We are hosted by University of Maryland College Park. Branch Avenue in Bloom was founded in 2010. Let's see if I can get this PowerPoint going. Okay. Branch Avenue in Bloom was founded in 2010. The interesting thing about my story is the Maryland Small Business Development Center assists small businesses throughout the state of Maryland. I was their customer at one time. I was a restaurant owner for 7 years. When my restaurant closed, I became a Main Street manager in Baltimore County. And it appeared that when they were offered this opportunity to revitalize this community in Prince George's County, they thought of me and my entrepreneurial spirit, and really it's become the job of my dreams. In 2010, Governor O'Malley decided that he wanted all of the communities, I guess I gotta use the mouse, huh? All of the communities, there we go, along the Green Line Metro station to be revitalized. They were historically underserved communities, 1 mile outside of Washington, D.C. So we got a $800,000 grant from HUD to work on these metro stations along the Green Line that goes into Washington, D.C. Now, what we decided to do was form the project using the model of the Main Street program, which is a national program. But the unique thing about it is the Main Street program, which is part of the National Historic Trust, had never been used before in an urban setting such as Temple Hills, Maryland. So we did the 4-point approach. We wanted to create a vibrant community. We wanted to get people interested in investing in the community. We wanted to change the appearance. We wanted to attract investors. Again, Temple Hills, Maryland is really 1 mile outside of D.C. It is a food desert. It has the boundaries of a 5-mile radius from the Capitol Beltway into Washington, D.C. Branch Avenue is a commercial corridor. Really, my title is Retail Revitalization Coordinator. It's a mouthful. But I'm supposed to come in and work with all of the small businesses along this 5-mile radius and help them remain sustainable. But once I got there, I realized, how can I revitalize businesses without looking at the needs of the community? You can't have a small business if you don't have any customers. So I want to give you a little history of Branch Avenue in Temple Hills, Maryland. In 1960, it was a happening place. All of the government workers moved out of D.C. They felt that they were moving their families into a suburban community for a better life. I have a picture here of Sam's Car Wash. They are the oldest sustaining business along that corridor. The day their grand opening was the day President Kennedy was assassinated. And they have been there the whole time. It's very interesting talking with them. They're the 3rd generation running this car wash. Their grandfather bought 4 acres of land with his GI Bill and built this car wash at the time in the 60s was state of the art. Then we had, this is how it used to look when they first bought their property. You see, it's nothing. That's Washington, D.C. that you see behind the cars. Then there was also Iverson Mall is located on Branch Avenue. It's a historic mall because it was the first enclosed mall in the United States on the East Coast. Then there was Woodward and Lotha. If any people that live in the area and remembers the days of Woody's, they're not here anymore either, but they used to be on Branch Avenue. This is the current condition of Branch Avenue. There are plenty of liquor stores. You know, there's plenty of fast food places, but there are no grocery stores. You can see the stormwater drains. They're all full of trash. But yet and still we're in the state of Maryland where our goal is to protect the bay. So the first thing I did when we came into Branch Avenue is to open up a storefront. My storefront used to be a Subway restaurant, and it had bars on the window. The first thing I did was took the bars off because I wanted the community to know that my door was open. We are a resource for you. This was our ribbon cutting ceremony. I've been there for 4 years. And I was able to speak with the family of Sam's Car Wash that owned the shopping center, and the father now, which was the last surviving brother of the 2nd generation, shook my hand and said he believed in what I was trying to do. We've been there for 4 years living for free, and I say I live for free, but I bring something to the table, and they're very happy with what we're doing. And also the other thing is, besides with them being retail landowners, I can provide their leasees with the opportunity, if there's anyone they want to keep in their shopping center, they can come to me as a employee of the Maryland Small Business Development Center and receive no-cost confidential business counseling. So what we did is we started to form committees to take a look at that community. And again, I want to say, historically, in the 60s and the 70s, we had those government workers that were moving into the community, baby boomers that are retired but still very active in their community, looking for the right way to come together to have one voice. Our strongest committee is our design committee. And as you can see, you know, we did a lot of planning. We cleaned up the trash, we got the kids involved, and we opened a farmer's market. We opened a farmer's market in Iverson Mall, which again, nobody went to Iverson Mall anymore because it was a community that they did not feel comfortable in. When we opened the farmer's market 4 years ago, farmers refused to participate. I'm not coming there. I'm going to get robbed. What are you talking about? I'm going to have cash on me. I'm going to be a target. 2 gentlemen from our community, which are unsung heroes, started going down to the same place that farmers go to the auctions, and took their own money, went to the auction, stood beside those farmers, and brought food into their community. They aggregated food into their community. I watched them sit down with the circulars from the newspapers and made sure what they offered the community was less than what any of the major retail supermarkets offered. So we've celebrated the 4th year of our farmers market, And the manager of Iverson Mall has come to me and said that on Saturdays he has seen that his sales have gone up because people are coming to the farmer's market. The first year, we struggled to get 40 people to come out on a Saturday. Well, our average Saturday is 150 people now, and we've gone as much as 400 to 1,000 people on a Saturday based on events that we've had around the farmer's market. We even had goats on Branch Avenue, which was the most hysterical thing because we were right at the traffic light and people were rolling down their windows saying, "What pretty dogs." But you know, they just were in that urban setting. They're like, "Wait a minute, those are goats. I never saw one." So that day we had like 500 people at the farmer's market just so they could bring their kids to see the goats. So, you know, we had to think out the box, but it's happening. So again, I say the design committee has really stepped up. They've gotten into the dirt. I also, something just so simple as I wanted to put a flower box in front of the office. All of the men got nervous because they said at night somebody's going to pick it up and throw it through the window. So I said, no problem. Then they were saying, never let Jennifer go shopping again. I got the heaviest flower pot I could find. You can see they had to get a forklift, and they had like 4 men had to take it off. We've had that flower box out for 3 years now, and it's just a beautiful asset. No one's ever vandalized it. We're all good. But they won't let me go shopping like that anymore without anyone. So again, we have the farmer's market. We do things like we do Branch Avenue Day. For the last 3 years, right before school starts, we have a playoff for trick or treat, which is they come to the farmer's market, they get a school bag. Then they have a map of all of the participating businesses along Branch Avenue. They go into those small businesses with their book bag and they get a back-to-school item with the hopes that the next time they need a service in their community, they'll remember that merchant that gave them a back-to-school item. And it's worked. So here we go. We had to join partnerships for my next idea, which was to take an abandoned streetscape and to turn it into an urban farm. So here we are. In 1974, they had the idea to do an inter-road connection. And then they decided to not do it. So since 1974, these people have been living with this abandoned streetscape on a major state highway, Route 5, 1 mile outside of DC. It's been an eyesore. It's been historically, it's been a dumping ground. But it was totally off the county's radar. And I'm gonna go back because it was so off their radar. Do you know how I had to get the plans for it? Through urban history, oral history. I had to go back to that Sam's Car Wash where it's the 3 generations, and they're my peers. They were like, Jennifer, I think I was in elementary school when they did that. I said, elementary school? It's been abandoned since these grown men whose children are now in college, it's been like this. Totally off the radar. They didn't even know, the county didn't even know where to find the plans. It was shocking. And when I had a meeting with the county, what really hit home, I asked the people in the meeting, anyone that wasn't alive in 1974, please raise your hand. And you know what? Some of the people on the county council raised their hands too. You know, so that really brought it back. It really brought it back around for them. So here we are. This is Branch Avenue, which again is Maryland State Highway Route 5, 1 mile outside of DC. You have to turn down this street that I used to call a road that goes nowhere, 32nd Avenue, and you can see, oh, you were saying that there's a pointer in here? Oh, laser. You can see this shadow right here. See that shadow? I have been looking at this plan for like 2 years. And then it finally dawned on me, that's a creek. It's part of a major watershed that flows into the Potomac. So they put this asphalt down here. They've left it here since 1974. There was no storm management, so when it rained on Branch Avenue, all of the storm water flowed down this stupid road that goes nowhere, and into the Potomac. I mean, and then let's not even talk about, this is a shopping center. Here we go with McDonald's, so the water ran down here, the water ran down here, the water ran down here, and it all met up here and was polluting not only Temple Hills, but the state of Maryland. When I brought that up to the county council, they said, how much do you need? Because my issue was, we had written 4 grants, and they were all denied. And when I finally called the Community Impact Committee and said, why was my grant denied? They said, it doesn't have enough meaning to the community. I was like, oh, really? Okay. So what I did is I brought to the attention of the Maryland Stormwater Act, which that site was in violation of. And also, we were very lucky in Prince George's County because the Department of Environment has new leadership, and he's really very, very in tune with stormwater management. So when I walked into his office, I was very, very welcomed. As a matter of fact, I called him my hero at the last meeting. He said, I try every chance I get. But we're going to go back. So what we've been able to do is the first thing we did was we depaved the site. So it was really interesting watching these machines come in. The county did go ahead and depave the site for us. And here you can see the end result. So we've taken up all of that asphalt, which the Maryland Stormwater Act, the counties are encouraged to remove asphalt, and they receive credits from the state of Maryland. So because I've brought this abandonment to Prince George's County attention, they're making money off of this. So we're implementing a stormwater management program before we can start our urban farm. As you can see, our thoughts are, as you remember I showed you how the water will run into the site, we're going to catch it before it comes in with rain gardens. And then we're going to put a trench at the entrance as well. Then we're also going to, next to this trench, we're going to have French drains that are going to go down and take the water where it's supposed to go, and that's into the storm drains. So we did this really with a number of partners. We had the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning funds my program. Then, of course, the Department of Environment, he really listened to what I had to say. We got our land rights from Public Works. We've used a nonprofit, the Neighborhood Design Center, to do all of our renderings. I'm part of University of Maryland, so now the school's interested and the students are interested. We needed to, my job is to come into that community and leave it sustainable. Sustainable. So we have the River of Life Church has come in to say, we'll take responsibility for the urban farm. Again, we have the design committee, which is part of the community, and also our legislative body has gotten involved. And I want you to know that the community at large, again, these are baby boomers. They remember the 60s. They remember what you have to do. Those people stood in the doorways of their churches and their civic associations and went to their neighbors and got a petition signed. And that's another thing. When I met with my county council person and I dropped those 20 pages of signatures down, she said, don't show this to anybody else. It's not a problem. We're going to make this happen. Okay? So you can change, people can change things. We also, in Prince George's County, we do have initiatives. We have initiatives for green roofs. The county has a pavement removal program. They encourage people to put permeable pavement in their driveways, to have rain gardens and an urban tree canopy. This was a good time for this type of project because now everybody's on board. The beautiful thing about being involved with University of Maryland, these are all students in a graphics art class in spring of 2014. The whole semester was dedicated to branding the urban farm. These students this is an example of just some of their work. It was overwhelming when I saw the work that they did. And they were all graduating seniors, so believe me, their work was good. And they've allowed us to use it in our urban farm. So not only are we going to have the farm there, which is kind of like a park and a farm, but it's going to be an opportunity to give education, hands-on education to the students in the area. This is what we propose it to look like. Again, we're at the point right now that we've removed the pavement, and we're beginning to implement putting up the fence, which will be a black wrought iron fence. We'll have the raised beds. We'll have park benches. We're planning on doing jazz in the garden. Part of it will be a flower garden, part of it will be a vegetable garden. All of these will be fruit trees that will line the garden. So what the end result is going to be, we're going to have 20 raised beds. We're connecting with the community. We're giving participants a direct avenue to become entrepreneurs. And that's, again, with us being part of University of Maryland and myself being an employee of the Maryland Small Business Development Center, we will be offering urban agriculture entrepreneurship classes. And just to share, in that community, we've already established the entrepreneurship training for the 3rd year for TANF recipients, people that are receiving public assistance. We do 8-week training with them because I always feel that there's a diamond in the rough. And a lot of times people just need a chance. We've held that session for 3 years, and it's really been quite rewarding. We also are providing people with a healthy food alternative and giving children a different way and opportunity to learn, know where their food is coming from. We were selected by NBC News to be highlighted on Earth Day this year. That was quite fun. That was the 2nd time that they've invited us to come back. And I have a staff of 3, it's 4 of us, and we pride ourselves in making small steps, but they have really, really big impacts. I welcome you to go to our website, branchavenueandbloom.org, and connect with the Maryland Small Business Development Center. Thank you for taking interest in our program.
Thanks, everybody. I would think that does anyone have questions for any of the speakers? Do we have time for that? Do you want to sit for a minute?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Did you have any problems with zoning?
No, I left that out, and I'm sure Maryland Park and Planning would be disappointed. Really, when we opened up the farm, there was not zoning to do the farmer's market. We didn't have zoning for that. They changed the zoning for us. And in preparation for the urban farm, again, they changed the zoning for us. So we collaboratively, everyone is really seeing this as a good opportunity to take Plight and turn it into a functional piece of land.
I have a question about the TNF. How did you work? Did you work with social services with that?
Yeah, what we did is we partner with Department of Social Services. We go in, we give them applications to fill out to get their business idea, and then we invite them in for an interview if their application looks like it's a viable business idea. We interview them, and they have to be accepted into the program.
Okay, well, I knew that TNF recipients now have a work piece or a job
Right.
training piece.
We partner with Department of Social Services, and as long as they are successfully involved in our training, that meets the law.
Well, we had talked about using TNF participants to train as an urban agriculture, interns to learn that as well, but it hasn't gone forward.
Well, be happy to share information.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk more about the specifics of your farm. Is your organization running the farm, and how does that work?
Yes. Well, Mr. Thomas, could you stand up, please? Mr. Thomas, I met Mr. Thomas when I first got the assignment at a community meeting. We shook hands, and I often say to him, did you think when we shook hands that time we would be here right now? Because he's now I've been able to hire him as our farmers market manager as well as our urban farm manager. Mr. Thomas grew up on a farm, involved with Prince George's County Farmers Association, and he's just brought a wealth of knowledge to us.
And do you do training on site there?
Yes, right now, again, we are building it currently, but with the help of the Chesapeake Bay Trust, we will be able to offer entrepreneur development training in our office, which is adjacent to this plighted piece of property. So, I mean, we have classroom
What are
training,
people going to be learning how to do? through
how to be profitable with an urban farm business.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thanks.